Welcome to the 30-minute hour. It's the personal development podcast for the seven-figure entrepreneur who's looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner. Joining me as always, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Absolutely. Not only is it a happy Monday, it's a post-Veterans Day Monday. Absolutely. We are happy about that. We salute all of the veterans. We're grateful for your service and the sacrifice that you've displayed. And Eric, I know we're going to give you a formal introduction here in just a second, but definitely thank you for your service.
It's my pleasure. It's my honor to serve.
Fantastic. So today we're going to be talking about 3 military leadership tactics that apply to your business. And I'll tell you, Ted, like I've always, when I was recruiting people and I was leading organizations, when I knew somebody had a military background, I was, oh yeah. I started to lean in because I knew, they had certain things they brought to the table. They brought to the table when it came to the leadership and just organizational skills and some of those things. So I think this is going to be a great conversation for our entrepreneurs who are watching and listening. But this is not your everyday podcast.
It's not, Erica. We do it a little different, Erica.
Oh, yeah. Should I be nervous?
Very nervous.
Oh, man. So definitely for those of you, you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And you can also go back and listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and any of those podcasting platforms. But don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. So again, today we're going to talk about the 3 military leadership tactics that apply to your business. And our guest today, she is the Vice President of Strategy, Transformation, and Analytics for Global Corporate Affairs at Johnson & Johnson. And then prior to joining Johnson & Johnson, she had a successful career with roles in both public and private sectors, beginning as an Army officer in the U.S. Army to serving as the director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, where she was responsible for over 1,200 employees, serving nearly 700,000 veterans and their families. She is a graduate of West Point and a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Indeed.
Please join me in welcoming to the 30-minute hour, Erica Jeffries Purdo.
Well, thank you.
Excited.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here with both of you. It's an honor to be asked.
Yeah, definitely an honor to have you on. Just really excited about the value you're going to provide, some of the things you're going to share. But I am curious. I do want to kind of give people some perspective and some background. I'm just curious, like when you were at West Point, like what was the vision that you had for your career at that time?
I thought I was going to be a general officer. I thought I would be in for my entire career in the military, and God had other plans for me. And I didn't have a plan B. So when I was medically discharged after 5 years, I had to figure it all out. So yeah, I thought I was going to be Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense.
Wow.
So I'm just curious, like what was it that drew you to the military to begin with? Like at what point did you know what? I want to be a military person, soldier. I want to be a general, that type of thing.
To be honest, I had never thought about joining the military, but I was very close to my pastor when I was in high school. I had helped to select her. I was the youth representative that brought her to our church, and got to be very close with her. And she was invited to speak at our cadet chapel. and I went with her up to West Point, and I came back absolutely hypnotized. I just thought, that is for me. I want to lead soldiers. I want to go to West Point. I think a big part of it was that my mom had helped to pay for my sister to go to college, and I was in a private school, and I was on a 90% scholarship, but it was a huge undertaking for her to get that 10% each year. And I just didn't want to be a burden to her. So it was an opportunity for me to go to college, get an excellent education, and she wasn't going to have to come out of pocket for anything. And then the icing on the cake was to be an officer in the Army. I didn't even really know what that meant at the time, but something in me just said, this is the place for you.
Okay. So if you could go back to that time when you were an undergraduate at West Point, knowing what you now know and being a mentor to yourself from back then, like what advice would you give to that version of yourself?
I think I would say you don't want to network. You want to cultivate relationships. So I recently had the opportunity to be the speaker at our Founders Day for West Point. And I said in that conversation that every role I've ever had in my career came from a connection in the long gray line, came from a West Point graduate. And that's from building relationships over the years and meeting people. So many people will take your business card and maybe you have one coffee and you never hear from them again until they need something. But what I've learned is you have to cultivate a relationship and connect and stay in touch and follow up. And it's a lot easier said than done. And most people don't do it. But in doing that, you end up being at the top of somebody's mind when an opportunity comes along. And they know you, they know what your interests are, they know what skills you bring to the table, and they call on you for opportunities. And that comes from really cultivating relationships. The other thing I would say is a lot of people think they have to have their whole career or life mapped out. Like, I know what I want to be when I grow up, and I know that I need to do X, Y, and Z to get there. And what I have discovered is that you don't need a map with waypoints plotted out. What you need really is a compass. So you may not have a clear step-by-step approach, but if you have a heading, a direction that you want to go in, I think it will help to chart your path, and you'll deviate left and right, but at least you'll be heading in a particular direction. So I think that's what I would tell myself. I didn't have a compass or a map. So in future, yeah, if I could go back to my former self, I think I would tell myself to at least have a compass.
Yeah, that I have to tell you, Erica, that's one of the best answers.
I was like, that's usually, Erica, one of those gotcha questions. You just killed that one. I was like, oh, let's go back to the drawing board. If you got that one.
No, that's really good. I want to stay on this. When you talk about the difference between networking and cultivating relationships, because I agree with you 100%. So it's like, what are some of the things you do to cultivate relationships?
So I would say, let's take, for example, I meet Eric Twiggs on the street, and he's doing something that I find interesting. And I ask if I could connect with him, and I get his business card, and I'll send him an email and say, hey, can we set up some time? We had a conversation when we met about your favorite kind of coffee, and I'd love to get a coffee with you and talk more about that. And then you take the time and have the, hour-long coffee with Eric, and you talk more about coffee. And then as I'm going about my daily routine, I might discover an article about coffee, and then I'll send that article to Eric and say, hey, Eric, I saw this, and it was related to the conversation that we had, and just thought I would send it your way. Nothing, nothing else, just a quick touch point. And then Eric might respond and say, hey, maybe we ought to get in touch again and grab another coffee. And I learned something new, and I'd like to share it with you. And then at the end of that conversation, you say, if you're open to it, Eric, I would love to be able to connect with you on a quarterly basis, or maybe we could set up something where we have a regular connect every 6 months, if that works for you, and then get it on the calendar. And when that's approaching, then you prepare for that conversation. There's nothing worse than getting on the phone with somebody and having nothing to talk about. So as you prepare for that networking conversation, harken back to conversations you had, but also have something new to share, and always have questions to ask. And if you do that enough times, before you know it, you have developed a relationship, and then you start talking about other things like their children or their hobbies or their business, and what their priorities are in terms of what they're trying to achieve in their work life. So it sort of starts that way, I think. That's how I've tried to do it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you've experienced where you've had these relationships, and then an opening comes up, and that person has you on their mind.
Exactly right. So I think, like I said, any role I've had, even from getting out of the military, I had mentored a young lady as a cadet. Her dad said, "Hey, you need to meet these people over here at Booz Allen, this consulting company." And I said, "Okay." And I met them, and that was my first job out of the military. And then, from there, I called back to one of my old professors and said, "Hey, sir, I want to be a White House fellow like we talked about all those years ago." And he helped me to prepare, and I was fortunate enough, blessed to become a White House fellow. And then from there, et cetera, et cetera. Every single role, that's how it's happened.
Yeah. So we had Erica, we had this segment at the end of the show we call Write This Down. Like, I think people need to be writing what you just said down about the difference between networking and cultivating relationships, because that definitely applies to business contacts. And I think a lot of people are they kind of go into it, the networking thing. Oh, I've got to sell myself, and I've got to be charming, as opposed to just listening to the other person and letting things flow, like you said. So.
Right. And I think that's true. I think people do think that it has to be all about me, but it really shouldn't be. It should be, if it's a real relationship, maybe there's something that you can gain from it by quote unquote selling yourself, but there's always something that you can offer as well, that you might be able to say to whomever you are networking with, how might I be able to help you? Maybe there's a connection you can make, or maybe there's, who knows what it might be. But for sure, don't count yourself out. You bring value to every table that you sit at.
For sure. And then, as far as your experience as a military officer, like how do you feel that prepared you for what you're doing now?
Well, a lot of the military is about being able to react and navigate in uncertainty, being able to get things done when you have a mission at hand. You got to get it done. And I think what I've learned from the military that I'm doing today, there's a lot of herding cats, as they say. No. Although I'm a dog person, I don't like to mess around with cats too much. But I think learning how to come into a space of ambiguity where there are challenges that need to be solved, being able to bring the right people to the table, kind of recognizing what talent and what value people bring, and kind of saying, you know what, we need that skill set to solve this problem. We need this skill set to solve the problem. Recognizing that I'm never going to be the smartest person in the room, never going to be able to solve whatever the challenge is on my own. Building teams and leading teams, I think, is really what I learned in the military, and definitely applies every day today. Being able to build teams and lead teams to get things done in environments where resources might be limited or other challenges may exist, you still got to get the mission accomplished.
I think,
go ahead.
I was thinking in that point right there as I was listening to you speak, and, that everything is mission driven, right? And I think that, when you think about people in the area and the mission that it's like, oftentimes it's life or death, right? I mean, the mission is like, it's can't fail type missions, right? And you're programmed and you're working in those types of environments, it seems like what you learn there can be applied in any environment once you're able to work in those types of spaces.
Well, it's true. And I think what you said is exactly right. It can be in the military, many times it's a life or death situation. And it's never that in corporate America. It's not going to be a life. So a lot of times I find myself saying, hey, nobody's going to die. Just relax. Let's take a beat, pause, and let's figure this out. Because at the end of the day, I mean, a friend of mine said that to me once. She wasn't a military person, but she's a doctor. And she made a decision, boom, just like that. And I was like, wow, you really just made that decision on the, just on the snap of a finger. And she said, yeah, because nobody's going to die. And the same is true in corporate life. Like, let's make a decision. You don't want to make a huge decision that might negatively impact your business, of course, but knowing that it's not a life or death situation, you also should know that you have time to think about it and to make the right decision and to bring the right people into the conversation. It doesn't mean you have unlimited time, but it's not a snap decision that you almost never a snap decision that you have to make in a corporate environment.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a good point. So I have a colleague of mine who he's in the Navy, and he was telling me that part of his training, they always told him that you had to be, they trained you to move with imperfect information. Right? And I thought about that when you were talking about uncertainty and ambiguity, where some people, they have to have 100% of everything before they can take the first step. But with the military, they teach you that, at best, you're going to have 70% of what you need to know. And that's best case scenario. So, I mean, any recommendations for that leader that's listening to us to help to move when you don't have perfect information?
I think you have to have the make it happen mindset. I think, part of being in the military was, listen, we got a mission and we got to get it done. And as I said, in corporate life, it may not be a life or death situation, but there's still a mission at hand. And there's still things that you have to get done, results that you have to drive, targets that you have to hit. And you're always going to have limits on your time. You're going to have probably not enough people that you want, probably not enough funding for whatever you're trying to do. But you have to be that creative, innovative thinker that gets it done, figures it out, and again, brings the right people to the table. I think my kindergarten, what is that book? Everything you need to know, you learned in kindergarten. My daughter says, her teacher says, you get what you get and you don't get upset. And I think, okay, that's profound. We have however many people on the team, we have however much time we have however much money we're going to get. And so that's what we got. So let's work with it. Let's figure out how to make it happen.
That's interesting, Eric. When we have these conversations about things, and I'll share with my team. I'm like, you got to treat it as if you're locked in a room and you got to get out. Like, yeah, like you got to get out. Like, you can sit there and say, I can't believe, how did we get in here, Eric? How did you happen to come in here and close the door behind you, knowing that we did not have a key? Like, it is what it is. We're in this room and we have to figure it out. And so we can decide if we're going to sit around in here for hours and be upset or just come up with a plan.
It's like it's not my most favorite movie, but one of my favorite movies is Apollo 13. I don't know if you've seen it, where Tom Hanks's character is on the moon and they got to figure it out. Like, if there's a malfunction, Houston, we have a problem. And they say, okay, here's all the things that he has in that rocket ship with him. How do we fix the problem with just these things? And exactly like you're saying, Ted, if we're locked in this room, we're not leaving here until we figure out how to use these few parts to solve the problem that we have. So it's usually not that dire in a corporate setting or even in your own business. But it's a mindset that forces you to never quit. It's that resilience that, hey, we're not going to give up. We have a job to do. So let's get it done.
Yep. Totally agree. So now because people now, Erica, they're on the edge of their seats. I mean, things you share.
I'm on the edge of my seat, man.
Yeah, she dropped some nuggets here. So they want to know, the people want to know, Erica, like what are your top 3 military leadership tactics that apply to the business world?
I think I've shared some of them already. I think one of them is, we used to have a friend, all 3 of us, who used to like a lot of alliteration. So if I could think about 3 R's in terms of military tactics that apply today, I would say rank. So we think about rank as the rank on your shoulder when you're in the military. So your rank, as I say, rank has its privileges. When you're of a certain rank, you're in charge. But any young officer who is smart will tell you, it doesn't matter that I outrank as a captain, a young captain in command of a company. I may outrank my first sergeant, but that first sergeant has 15, 20 years more experience in the military than I do. So it probably makes sense for me to listen to that person. And the same is true in business. I may be the CEO or I may be the leader of a particular team, but your rank, it doesn't really mean anything if you don't have the experience. So your title in business is one thing, but you may have people on your team that know a heck of a lot more than you. And so if you're smart, you'll spend more time listening than being in charge, as they would say. So I would say rank is the first thing to think about. The second thing I would say is kind of what we just talked about, resources. You're always going to have a limit on the resources available, the number of people on your team, the amount of time that you might have, the amount of funding that you can have. But having that sort of make it happen mindset is really important to have success in business. So listen, you're going to have obstacles no matter what, but pushing through those obstacles and getting to where you need to go with what you have is a mark of a true leader, I think.
Hang on. So am I understanding this correctly that like making excuses about a lack of resources isn't on your list? That's not one of your top 3 making excuses about?
You know, most people would say let's blame it on somebody else, but no. I think a mark of a true successful leader, no, you're not going to be making excuses.
Yeah, no, the great leaders I've seen, they're resourceful.
Exactly.
When they have limited things to work for, they make it happen mindset, like you said. Ted, you were about to say something?
No, I'm just shaking my head in agreement at the edge of my seat.
Well, I'll give you the third R, and the third R is radical candor. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the book Radical Candor.
Yes.
But it's by Kim Scott, and I had my team read some excerpts from it. And it's really important that people are able to have critical conversations, and it is not something that comes naturally. I always say bad news does not get better with time. You got to be able to deliver a direction or provide feedback in a meaningful and very candid way. Doesn't mean you have to be mean to people. It means you have to be honest with people and give them, they say feedback is a gift, and it really is, but it's a skill to be able to provide feedback that people don't want to necessarily hear. So I think that's the other thing I learned from the military. In the military, there's not a whole lot of care about your feelings necessarily. But although our military has changed and has evolved in a lot of meaningful ways that make it a lot more inclusive and respectful of other people's backgrounds and feelings. But I will say one thing that they do well is they're going to give it to you straight, and they're going to give it to you quick. And in business, like I said, bad news doesn't get better with time. It's important to be able to provide feedback candidly.
You know, that feedback thing is really tough there. You know, I've been dealing with some stuff around that. And, you know, I had an advisor one time say to me, a business advisor, and he was saying to me one time years ago, Ted, you don't really like accept feedback. Like, and I was like, what? Like, you're not open to it. I'm like, just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean I'm not open to receiving it, right? Like if you tell me something and I feel like really strongly that, you know, wait a second, you got me wrong there, versus accepting that, yeah, what you're saying is accurate. Now I've learned over the years that it's your perspective, you know, but I don't have to necessarily be like, well, that is me because that's what Eric thinks of me. It may just be from Eric's interaction with me, or Eric hasn't built a relationship with me to really kind of see how best to, you know, present feedback. Because I think it's obviously a very thin line between feedback and then a stronger word, which is criticism. Right? I think we have a hard time with someone criticizing us, whereas feedback is, okay, let me just kind of put something out there for you to consider, right?
Right.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. That book, Kim Scott's book. I read it as well, and I've had my clients read it. And one of the things, my takeaway from that book is that term she came up with is called ruinous empathy.
Yes.
Where, you think that holding back the truth is doing them a favor, but it's really hurting them.
It is. And to Ted's point, you may not want to hear what people are telling you, but sometimes you have to look outside of yourself and kind of take the feedback as a gift and really let somebody else's eyes help you to see yourself. And that's not always an easy thing to do, because they might see something that you don't want to see about yourself.
That's
right. But that's probably the place where you need to spend the most time evolving.
Yeah. Sometimes I have this saying, you just got to eat the soup. You just got to eat the soup.
Yeah.
Doesn't taste the greatest. Sometimes you just got to eat the soup.
Yeah. In the military, we say, embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So we got the 3 military tactics. You got number 1, rank, number 2, resources, and then number 3, radical candor. Fantastic.
If I could add a 4th, I think I would add resilience, like we talked about. Having the grit. That's another book, Grit by Angela Duckworth. Great book about never quitting, about how you can learn from your challenges, and it makes you stronger, and just getting that mental fortitude to never quit. I think you get that from the military for sure.
Yeah, I think if you have number 4, I mean, that can produce, especially in business, that can produce a lot of success, because most of the time it's a war of attrition.
Yeah, if you're an entrepreneur, listen, you got to have a lot of grit, a lot of never quit.
Yep. Any comments on that, Ted? Any
facts? Those are facts. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You cannot quit. You got to be resilient. You got to figure it out. Yeah. I mean, but I do think that, kind of going back to what you said, Eric, I know a lot of great entrepreneurs that are, former, individuals that have served in the military. And I think that definitely, carries over. And not only, with them, but even their organizations, they tend to have others that have a military kind of mission focused mentality as well within their organizations. I don't think that's by coincidence.
No, not at all. Okay. So Erica, now you are the VP of Strategy and Operations for Johnson & Johnson. And I was doing a little research. One of the things that you deliver measurable value at scale. That's one of the things
that sounds big right there.
Yeah.
That's what my LinkedIn says.
So how exactly do you do that?
Well, I think in this role, we are able to deliver measurable value at scale because we don't try to do it all by ourselves. So I'm not trying to do any of these things on my own. I have a fantastic team and we work in a great organization. And to do things at scale, I believe you have to pull from people all across the organization. So you're not just looking at one team and how to deliver results for the one team. How can you bring, again, as we talked about earlier, recognize the talent and skills that each person brings to the table, bring those folks to the table and give them a mission and send them out, get it done. Build the team and then empower the team to do the work. I think that's critical, and often the piece that leaders will forget. We might come together and have a conversation about what needs to get done, but if I'm going to be over your shoulder and watching everything you do and checking your boxes for you, then I can't get what I need to get done, and you're frustrated because I'm trying to do what you're supposed to do. That empowerment piece is sort of the secret sauce that if we all know what we're supposed to do, we all understand the mission, and we all understand what part we play in accomplishing the mission, then having the empowerment to go out and do it and then come back and make sure we're checking in, but getting it done, I think that's how you deliver measurable value at scale.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. I think when people feel empowered, that's a big thing, as opposed to, I think when you micromanage, they feel like you don't trust them, and it's like, okay,
Right.
So no, go ahead.
Exactly. Why should I be doing it if you're going to look over my shoulder and do it for me? If you know how you want it done, you can go do it. I want to be empowered to do what you've asked me to do. So that's what I try to do for people on my teams.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm sure, Erica, you get asked a lot of questions all the time. People in the military, outside the military, people within Johnson and Johnson. But what's one question you never get asked that you wish people would ask you?
You know, that is a great question. And I was thinking about this. And I suppose I would love for people to say, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? That might be a question. Or if you could redo anything in your history, what would you do? What would you take a do-over on? Those are questions I think I never get asked, and I don't know if I want to answer them.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I was about to say, if there was anything that you could do over, that would be a great one to hear.
I mean, I think if I could do something over, I think I would go back to that, that young Erica coming out of West Point and tell her, what I said to answer your first question. I didn't have strong mentors at an early age. I have great mentors today, but when I was first starting out, I didn't have great mentors, and I didn't even know that I needed them, nor did I know how to seek them out. So I wish I could go back and really ask the questions and really spend time thinking about what I wanted in my life. I think most people don't do that. I was having a mentoring session earlier today, and it was funny. This young lady that I was talking to, I've known her now probably 15 years, I would say, maybe 12, 15 years. And she's saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm almost 40 and I don't know what I want to be. And I said, well, when you were 25, you wanted to do this. And she was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I wanted to do that. And I forgot that that's what I said I wanted to do. And if I could go back to my 25th birthday, spending time to think about what I want to do, like she had it figured out. She had it figured out then, and somewhere along the way got distracted by interesting things to do, and she did those things. But my whole career has been interesting things that I've just said, that sounds interesting, I'm going to go do that. That sounds interesting, I'm going to go do that. But if I would have just taken time to sit and think about, if I had all the time in the world, what would I be doing? Then that would have given me that compass that I was talking about. Maybe not the exact job and the exact process or step by step, but it would have given me a heading. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy in my life. I think things have worked out well. But if I could do it over, I would take the time to think about, what is the legacy I want to live? What is the impact I want to have? And how and where is the space where I can do that? And kind of give myself that directional heading so that I could maybe bounce around, but at least I would be always moving in the right direction.
Man, yeah, it really makes you think. That would be a great question.
But wouldn't that take some of the fun out? Like, because I think that when you think about if you could go back, right? I mean, you kind of go back with, kind of the things that you've kind of been through in your experiences, and then you kind of go back with, you kind of know what it looks like, right? It's some, I guess some of the fun, I think, is kind of figuring it out and kind of going through the journey a bit. You'll hear some people be like, yeah, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't want to change a thing. Like maybe I needed to go do this and maybe stumble here and I learned from that, or go do something where, I may, like, because sometimes you may not even have tried if you knew, oh, maybe this may not work out well.
That's a very good point. I think that's a good pushback, because if I do look back over my career, I would say I have a lot of dots that don't necessarily look like they're connected. But when I draw the line through them all, the theme that I find is I'm constantly dropped into a deep end of a pool and
Mm,
forced to swim. And
mm,
I've been blessed to be a halfway decent swimmer. But the thing is, being able to come into space where you have to learn quickly, build teams, and get things done is the theme. So
mm.
everything I've done is sort of like, okay, let's pull this team together. Let's figure out how to fix this organization or change what we're working on or create something new to create a better benefit for this organization, whatever it was throughout the career. And you're right, Ted. I never lose. I win or I learn. Have you heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
And that's
I got a
exactly
t-shirt
right.
with that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's the
Mhm.
best saying ever. Like, you know, every single thing I've done. And like I said, I wouldn't change anything because I have learned so much along the
Mhm.
way. And I think things have turned out well.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. I heard somebody say, so the dots always connect when you look back. But if you really think about it, you're really standing on a dot,
Right.
right?
Huh.
So you think, and sometimes you feel like you're off course, and why is this happening? But you really are where you need to be, and then later you realize, you know what? I was dealing with all of this to prepare me for that.
And see, I
So,
think if you can keep that perspective and like zoom out on your life and realize I'm just on a dot right now, because
mhm.
you get in the swirl of I should be doing this or I should have been doing that or how come I'm not here or haven't advanced this far or whatever it is, and you frustrate yourself or you second guess yourself. But if you zoom out and look back and you're like, oh, I'm here, whatever I'm going through today is some part of the overall process that I have a lesson here that I need to learn to better prepare me for whatever the next dot is that I may not even see right now.
Wow.
So trusting the process and kind of having the faith to know that there is a plan for your life and you just got to be open to it.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Okay. So we're coming down to Ted's favorite part of the show. Again, it's called Write This Down.
Mm.
So this is where we each go around and we give at least one takeaway from this particular episode that we want the people to write down so they can level up. So Erica, you're the guest of honor, so we'll start with you. What do the people need to write down?
I think that people should write down. I think what Ted said was really profound. You know, don't second guess where you are today, and what you said too, Eric, about standing on the dot. I think that's really profound because we toil and torment ourselves about trying to get ahead, trying to get to the next level or get that next promotion or build that business, and we never really are in the present. And I think you need to write down, stay in the present. Don't spend, not that you shouldn't have a vision for your future, of course you should, but that you shouldn't miss the present and the lesson in today, being so focused on what's coming tomorrow. Because if you're so focused on what's coming tomorrow, you'll miss the lesson that you're supposed to get today. So I think I would write that down, that you've got to be present and appreciate the lessons that you're being taught today.
That's great. Stay in the present.
So,
All right.
so there's a reason, Erica, why I really don't really like this part of it is because, especially like with a guest like you that's just been dropping these boulder after boulder after boulder throughout, and I'm at the edge of my seat. I'm like, and now I have to follow you, right? And then you even took some of my stuff. I'm like, really? Like you took some of my stuff and just kind of blended it all together so eloquently. So really, my write this down, it goes back to when you were talking about the whole thing about the networking and establishing the relationships. And that's something that, I really, really constantly work on because I think everything is tied to relationships, right? Like there's not a job or a contract or just life is just full of relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up a point about like when the way that you establish you kind of build these relationships and you're trying to really looks like trying to make a win-win out of this. Like if you have this if you allow me an opportunity to establish some type of relationship with you, that here's what I'm looking to bring something to the table too. I'm not just here to try to get something from it. And so,
Mhm.
I look at it from a standpoint, as a saying that Eric has probably heard me say a million times, is I'm always looking for potluck relationships versus buffet relationships,
I like that.
right? Like like everyone's bringing a dish to this, and there's a dish in this. You can you can reach over in this dish and get a little something out of that experience of a relationship or engagement of some type with me, just as much. And I think if you go into it like that, like from what you're saying, if you go into it that way, thinking I'm bringing a dish to this, then that people tend to open up a little more, right?
Hmm.
I'm not just here just to come get something and go. Like I'm here to, bring something here, and who knows, right? It may be something now, it may be something 6 months from now, but whatever the case is, I mean, we found a way to engage and be in each other's circle to some degree, and there's going to be some value to that. So yeah, I think it's all about bringing potluck relationships versus buffet relationships.
Love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So Ted, I don't know if I told you this ever before, but I've used that in my world many times, and I've never given you credit.
You never give,
I've never. I've always played it like I came up with it.
Well, world, yeah, I gave it to the first time, but I'm sure you gave it his own twist.
So some of y'all are hearing this for the first time. You now know that Ted is the author of the potluck versus the buffet.
Oh, that's too funny.
All right. So no, my piece for this segment has to do with what Erica said earlier about this make it happen mindset. I mean, I think that's it right there. And I think people are a lot of people make excuses about not having resources, right? But then you can have two people, and they have the same resources. One person is making the excuses about not having enough. The other person is dealing with the same thing and just crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? It's a mindset. It's that make it happen mindset. I could do this if I didn't have these kids. There's somebody that has kids that's setting records. It's a make it happen mindset. And I hope that's one of the big takeaways, because I know, I have to imagine, Erica, being in the military. I mean, if you're going to be leading people, you have to have that.
Absolutely.
And because then people are following your lead, and if you have a make it happen mindset, they're gonna make it happen when they're facing their challenge. So write that down. Get a make it happen mindset.
One other thing I want to throw out there before we leave, and Eric, you were talking about mentors. And so for those viewers out here that are thinking about, I need to find a mentor, right? Like what would you recommend that they look for in identifying a mentor?
I think it depends on what they are hoping to achieve. And I think, you've heard many people talk about having a kitchen cabinet or a board of directors. Michelle Obama talks about it in her book, Becoming. Many people have talked about having a group of mentors, not just one, but folks that you trust, that you call on for different things. So you may aspire to be a Ted Fells and run your own business. And so you want a mentor that has done that. But you also want to, develop your finances or know how to manage your money. And so you want to lead a mentor that's done that. And you may also want a mentor that can help you in a personal aspect of what you're trying to do. I mean, so it's some people, that person that's going to give you the honest truth, that person that's going to be your cheerleader, that may not always tell you the truth, but they're going to cheer you on, that person that's going to challenge you and give you that radical candor in their feedback and the ruinous empathy. You need different things from different people. So I think, and it's hard. You don't necessarily go up and say, hey, Eric, can you be my mentor? maybe somebody might do that. But again, it comes from the relationship building where you don't even ever have to have that conversation. As you're having the intermediate conversations, eventually you've built this relationship, and next thing you know, oh, this is my mentor, because we have that kind of relationship where I can be open and honest with you, and you're going to challenge me to think differently about X, or you're going to help me understand how to go from here to where I want to be. And it becomes a mentoring relationship. So I think recognizing where you have gaps in your understanding, and then seeking out people that have expertise in those gaps.
No, thank you for that. Because I was going to ask you right now, can you be my mentor? Just one. I know, I mean, your mentees, you might have an age limit on your mentees. You might not, hey, we can talk about it though. I mean, hopefully you'll consider.
Of course,
now,
Ted.
Thank you.
We've built a relationship over the years. Absolutely.
That's right. Thank you.
We've had some tremendously successful guests on this show, you included, Erica, and that word always comes up: mentors and mentorships. And people. I don't think anybody's really self-made. I think you have to have the right people around you to really get to that next level. So
absolutely, because the learning that we talked about, you don't have to learn all the lessons yourself. When you have mentors, they can tell you about the lessons they've learned. So you don't have to lose on your own. They can lose and tell you that lesson, so you don't have to make the same mistake. And that's the benefit of having mentors in your life. You can learn from their successes and from their failures.
All right. Yep. Well, I totally agree. So if people want to connect with you, Erica, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
I think one of the things that's great about LinkedIn is that you can find anything on anybody's background and connect. I will admit I am terrible at LinkedIn, but you can find me there, and I will eventually find the message. But I that's one of my goals for next year. I got to get better at LinkedIn. I'm terrible, but you can reach me there. Erica Jeffries Purdo. That's where I'm on there.
All right. Well, cool. Again, thank you, Erica, for sharing what you shared. Like Ted said, you definitely dropped some nuggets that people can take their. And it's interesting, the things you said, we were based off of your military experience, but it applies directly to a business. If you follow what you just said, I mean, you can't go wrong. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I want to thank both of you, because what's really cool about this conversation and what you all are doing with this podcast is these are candid conversations where you're inviting people on to share wisdom that is helping so many others to follow in your footsteps. I mean, you're both very successful entrepreneurs and have led really successful careers. And I think it's awesome that you're sharing knowledge and creating a platform to share that knowledge more broadly with others. So kudos to both of you for this really innovative platform and conversation. I appreciate the invitation to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. The one thing about this, Erica, is when we have these guests, it gives us an opportunity to learn too, right? So we get to just ask a bunch of questions, and just this time with you has just been phenomenal. And it's and we've known you for some time, right? But we've never had this type of conversation to kind of see what what that foundation, what kind of drives you to, because you can be a mentor and not kind of have this official mentorship. Like when I look at you, I've always looked at you in your career and watched the moves that you make. Man, White House fellow, that's amazing. Wow. Okay. This position, in support of the VA. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, Johnson, man, this Erica is something else. But it's someone I've known, and you just watch those moves, and always so humble and just approachable, kind of the same person. But you're like, okay, what really is? What's in the hood of this Erica Jeffries Purdo machine? What's in the hood of it? And we had a chance to kind of lift the hood and get a peek in there today, and we appreciate that.
Well, I would say the same thing about you, Ted. I'm telling you, when we connected earlier this year and you told me you've been leading New Core Vision for 20 some odd years. I mean, that is incredible.
Thank you.
Incredible.
It's a blessing. It's a blessing. Thank you.
Incredible. I mean, I mean, that blows my mind. I've always said, like, anybody that's an entrepreneur, I have so much respect for, because I had a good government job, and then I had, a corporate role. And that's, I don't have to feed myself because I have always had a job. But entrepreneurs, you're out there grinding it out. I mean, not that I'm not working, of course. I mean, we all are, but I mean, it's a different mindset when you're doing your own thing. So it's a tremendous salute to both of you.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you.
Yeah,
You haven't seen me cry, though. I cry when I'm alone. I cry often when I'm alone. Thank you.
Those tears build strength. That's all.
Yeah, oh my God, it's a blessing. Yeah,
cleansing.
Cleansing. That's what I'm doing.
Exactly.
But yeah, once again, thank you for what you shared. This has been a fantastic episode. And while we're on the topic of sharing, as far as our viewers and listeners, don't forget to share the show.
Share the show.
That's right. Don't keep this great episode a secret. And again, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those places where you consume podcast content. So that's our time for this week.
Erica, will you come back one day?
Oh, I would love to. I'll have to learn some more things before I come back. But once I do, I'll be happy to come back.
We're going to get you back. Man, amazing.
Thank you. Thank you both. I appreciate the invitation so much. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Okay, this has been a fantastic episode of the 30 Minute Hour Podcast. Until next time, have a great one.